today, though, sorry, bad news today. Appeals court reversed it. So I'm going to talk about, I know, I'm going to talk about just how this all fits together. And so I did negotiate on tariffs. I was an analyst for them. This is when I was just out of grad school. So when I was working on tariffs back in the dark ages, process was very, this was during a big multilateral negotiation on the Tokyo trade talks. But everybody who worked on it, it was interagency, it was commerce, agriculture, labor, treasury, state, all working together with representatives of industry and the agricultural community and labor. So everybody who had skin in the game was part of the conversation and part of the negotiations. Now we have one man deciding what tariffs are going to be. And he doesn't understand them, as we all know. But what's also interesting is the process, which has been totally upended. This is just symptomatic of what's going on in every other avenue. And that is, trade agreements are treaties. Therefore, they have to be ratified by the Senate. The Senate has completely abdicated their role. And they could be doing something, because we have lots of remedies for their imaginary trade problems that we have with the world. And those are the International Trade Commission and the Department of Commerce. If there is a country that is doing anything wrong to against the trade agreements that we already have in place and have had for decades, you can go to those for relief, and you can go to the World Trade Organization for relief, none of which has been done. So the reason the court yesterday overturned most of the tariffs, it was because they were done under the Economic Emergency Act of 1977, rarely used, and it's hard, and as Paul Krugman wrote yesterday, it's very hard to argue for an economic emergency when you have 4% unemployment and 2.5% inflation compared to, what most of us are used to from the 80s through the 2010. So there's no justification. But I want to talk about why process is important and to put it in an economic context. International trade is 27% of our GDP, gross domestic product. That's a pretty hefty number. It's a little higher than average with OECD countries, the more developed countries. But also, it contributes between 2 and 8% towards our GDP, towards our annual GDP. And exports obviously bring in dollars, but also imports. Because when you think about it, imports are consumed by the manufacturers, by the consumers, by the retailers. That's economic activity. That if you studied Keynesian economics, and I'm one of those people who still believes in Keynes, your monetary movement, the speed of money helps predict GDP, and et cetera. So turnover is good. Also, we're the largest exporter after China, which everybody talks about China. We're number 2. So exports are a huge part, but not just goods, also services. And what I want to talk about for a second is that retaliation is allowed under all of these bilateral and multilateral agreements. So that's what other countries are doing. And they can retaliate not just with tariffs, they can retaliate by stopping investment from American companies, on stopping buying services like financial services, software as a service, all of those types of ephemeral goods which don't generate tariffs for anybody. Those are usually not. Sometimes they're not even taxed, but their tariffs are not levied on them. So the retaliation that we can expect, plus the contraction of our economy because of reduction in trade, which generates a lot of economic activity, is going to end higher prices because of tariffs, because we all believe they cause higher prices, right? That's stagflation, which is the hardest to get out of after you're in it. Again, old enough to remember the 70s, and with inflation now. So this is a recipe for disaster. There are some claiming that they want to create this economic crisis so they can come save the world, but it will take a long time to get out of it. And this is why I'm very alarmed. So I would say that this is also crazy uncertainty under, the taco issue on tariffs. That's also producing a drop in consumer confidence, as well as if I were still in business, I would be retrenching. It just would not be a time to invest, especially if you were exporting. So this is something that makes me very alarmed as a former international economist, but also it's about due process as well. The fact that the courts are trying, but we continually see the administration try and run everything, and this is just one symptom. It's much more horrible in human terms when it comes to immigration, et cetera, but also all of us are affected by this. And I think we need to write to our senators and even to Marcy about what needs to be done to shore up our processes and our due process for international trade as well. Yeah.
Could you talk to them directly? What do you want them to do?
I don't want them to undermine the current court process, but I would like the Senate to, especially these two senators, to reaffirm that they need to be ratifying any change in treaties, or else at least making sure the administration goes through the process, which is to refer it to Commerce or the ITC to any supposed harm that we have. But the problem is there is very little harm. Tariffs are very low around the world among industrialized countries. Our trade is working well, and okay, Marcy won't agree with this one, but I think NAFTA saved the auto industry. So, because our trade with the three countries has grown in that area, and Mexico's economy is doing quite well because of changes. They took back business from China that we had moved to Chinese imports, and there's a lot more cut and sew in Mexico than there was probably 20 years ago. So, trade builds economies. I don't think it should all be free trade, but I think that, most sophisticated economies have ways to protect various industries if they want to. We don't do it as much as some of the others, but we have subsidies or countervailing duties to fight that. So use the process, use the institutions that are there. The senators should be saying something, but they're not. Congress, okay, I'm going to get off track completely. Doge. We have the General Accounting Office, or now a Government Accounting Office, which I also worked for back when I was a student. Congress, they report to Congress. They investigate any fraud Congress wants investigated. So if there was anything going on, these people are dedicated. They're lawyers and accountants and forensic accountants, and if there's fraud, they found it. And so we need Congress to stand up. That's both the House and the Senate, because I'm getting sick of it. That's my demagoguery. But anyway, yes. Yes, Melissa.
If anyone else has a question, they can go first.
I can't hear you.
I'm just thinking about Dennis's disruption in the environment. This tariff thing seems like a disruption, you can't predict what's going to happen. And watching this economy, it seems like the markets are yo-yoing and they're taking their profits, whatever they're doing with their market manipulation. But down here at my low level, it seems remarkably resilient. And I'm like, are you seeing any canaries in the coal mine? Not that I don't think it's going to have a massive, disruption coming, but it's like the resiliency has been shocking to me to watch after everything that they're doing to it, right? Because I sure thought long before now, with all that was going on, that we would have had some major ramifications.
Okay, in there, I'm hearing that, how does this affect all of us?
What do you see coming? Where you can see like little things, little telltale signs of what's coming down the pike shortly for us?
It really depends on